The sun had barely risen when Ada woke up to the familiar sound of Mama Oak, banging pots in the kitchen. Lazy girls sleep past dawn, the woman's voice echoed, sharp and cold. Ada didn't respond. She quietly tied her wrapper and stepped into the kitchen to finish the cooking she had already started the night before. Mama Oak watched her with folded arms, lips curled in disapproval. Don't oversalt the stew again. My son likes his food properly done, not soaked in tears. Ada swallowed hard and stirred the pot. Every day since she married Chijioke and moved into his family house, this had been her reality. She wasn't a daughter-in-law. She was a maid, only without pay or kindness. At first, she thought it was temporary, that Mama Oak was just trying to test her strength, like many mothers do, but months passed, and the insults got sharper, the chores heavier, the love colder. Chijioke, he had mastered the art of silence. He was either at work, at church, or glued to his phone when home. Whenever Ada complained, he shrugged. Just endure, she's old-fashioned. But it wasn't just old-fashioned, it was cruel. She cleaned, cooked, scrubbed toilets, and was still accused of doing nothing. She smiled in front of visitors, while Mama Oak called her barren behind closed doors. She never told anyone about the times she cried alone in the bathroom, holding onto the sink just to stay upright. And yet she stayed, for love, for hope, for the belief that things would change. But as she watched Mama Oak deliberately pour palm oil onto the clean kitchen floor that morning, saying, "You missed a spot yesterday," something in Ada's heart shifted. She had become a stranger in her own marriage, and something had to give. Ada stood by the window, her hands soaked in soapy water, staring blankly at the backyard. Children played in the distance. Laughter floated on the breeze. It felt like another world, one she used to belong to before this house swallowed her whole. She didn't hear her husband enter the room until he spoke. "You haven't ironed my shirt yet." Her heart dropped. "I'll do it now," she replied quickly, wiping her wet hands on her wrapper. Not even a good morning. Chijioke barely looked at her. He reached for his shoes and left the room. No smile, no kiss, no warmth. To everyone else, they were the perfect couple. He was a good provider. She was a quiet, respectful wife. But behind closed doors, Ada felt like a ghost, unseen, unheard, unloved. Mama Oak made it worse. When guests visited, she called Ada my daughter. When they left, she called her a curse. She brought nothing into this marriage. Mama Oak often said to her daughters, loud enough for Ada to hear, "No child, no money, no use." They'd all laugh. Ada would keep washing plates or stirring pots, pretending her heart wasn't breaking into pieces. She had no one to talk to. Her own parents were in the village and believed she was living in comfort, married to a good Christian family. What would they say if they knew she was scrubbing floors like a slave? One day, Mama Oak gave her a bowl of beans to peel and said, "You should be grateful I even allow you in this house. You're just lucky my son married you." That night, Ada stared at the ceiling, wondering what exactly she was holding on to. And deep down, she started to wonder, was it time to let go? The house was buzzing with excitement. It was Chijioke's younger brother's engagement party, and everyone was preparing to host guests. Ada had spent the entire night cooking and barely caught 2 hours of sleep. Her feet ached, her back throbbed, but Mama Oak wasn't done yet. "Ada," she barked, "the plantain you fried is soggy. Redo it, and make sure the rice doesn't burn. Or do you need someone to teach you how to boil water too?" Laughter erupted from the living room, where Mama Oak's daughters sat sipping juice, scrolling through Instagram. None of them lifted a finger to help. Chijioke walked past the kitchen, adjusted his cap, and didn't even glance her way. By the time guests arrived, Ada had changed into a simple wrapper and blouse, her eyes dull with exhaustion. She barely touched her plate during the party. She just kept refilling drinks, clearing plates, and pasting smiles. And then it happened. Mama Oak stood in front of everyone and made a toast. "To my future daughter-in-law," she said, raising her glass toward the bride-to-be. "At least this one came with something: beauty, education, and a family name. Not like some people who only brought themselves and have refused to add value." There was a pause, a few awkward chuckles. All eyes shifted to Ada. She stood frozen, a tray in her hand, her mouth dry. Even Chijioke looked away. Something broke inside her. Later that night, when the guests had gone, she walked into the bedroom, pulled out her small traveling bag, and began to fold her clothes. Chijioke looked up from his phone. "Where are you going?" Ada didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "Anywhere that doesn't make me feel like less than a human." Ada didn't leave that night, not because she changed her mind, but because something unexpected happened. Just as she zipped up her bag, a loud knock rattled the front door. A neighbor had rushed over with panic in her eyes. It's Mama Oak, she collapsed. Everything happened quickly, screams, phone calls, and a rushed drive to the hospital. Ada sat in the back seat, beside her unconscious mother-in-law, trying to ignore the bitter irony. The same woman who spat venom at her that morning now lay helpless in her arms. Doctors diagnosed a mild stroke. She would live, but she would need care, therapy, constant support. By the next morning, Chijioke's sisters had vanished. One claimed she had a conference in Abuja. Another said she had to travel urgently. Even Chijioke looked overwhelmed. She'll need help, the doctor said. Someone who can cook, clean, help her bathe, administer medication. They all turned to Ada. Her first instinct was to walk away. Why should she? After everything, why stay? But as Mama Oak lay motionless in the hospital bed, frail and speechless for once, Ada's heart whispered a truth she didn't want to hear. She wasn't staying for them, she was staying for her, for the version of herself that still believed in compassion, even after being denied it. So she unpacked her bag, not out of defeat but quiet strength. Back at home, Mama Oak returned in a wheelchair. The once loud woman was now reduced to quiet groans and murmurs. Her daughters were still on their way. Chijioke left early and came home late, barely speaking. The house was quiet, but for the first time, Ada's presence filled it. She was no longer the invisible servant. She was the only one left standing. The first week was the hardest. Mama Oak groaned through every bath. She grimaced when Ada helped her sit, screamed when lifted from the bed, and turned her face away when fed. She couldn't speak clearly yet, but her eyes still held judgment. At first, Ada did everything in silence, grinding pepper, warming soup, washing linen, changing bedsheets. The same chores she once did under constant insults. She now did without a word from anyone. But this time, she moved differently. No one else was around. There were no daughters to impress, no visitors to pretend for. Chijioke. He barely acknowledged her anymore. The illusion of his protection had shattered. So Ada stopped waiting for approval. She bought fresh fruits without asking for money, reorganized the pantry, took Mama Oak to her hospital appointments alone, hired a nurse for 2 nights just so she could rest. And when Mama Oak cried in pain at night, it was Ada's arms she fell into. Something strange happened one evening. As Ada helped her walk from the bathroom back to the bed, Mama Oak whispered hoarsely, "Thank you." Ada paused, shocked. Her hand trembled slightly but she steadied herself. "You're welcome," she replied softly, adjusting the pillow behind her head. It wasn't much, just 2 words. But they cracked the stone. The next morning, Mama Oak reached for Ada's hand before she left the room. No words, just a lingering hold. Ada didn't pull away. That day, Ada realized something had shifted. This house no longer suffocated her. It needed her. But more importantly, she no longer needed it. The power went out just after midnight. The house was quiet. The only sound was the distant hum of a neighbor's generator and the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock in Mama Oak's room. Ada had just checked her temperature, normal. She turned to leave when Mama Oak's frail voice called out, "Ada." She hadn't heard her speak a full sentence in weeks. Ada paused. "Yes, Ma." There was silence, then a shaky breath. "Is it?" Ada hesitated, then pulled a chair closer to the bedside. For a moment, Mama Oak stared up at the ceiling, her eyes glistening in the candlelight. "I wasn't always this way," she began. "But life, it hardened me. My husband's people treated me like nothing. I had to fight for respect in this house. And when Chijioke said he was marrying you, I saw a younger me." Ada didn't know what to say. "I thought I was protecting him. I didn't want him to marry a girl who would end up like me, voiceless, stepped on. But you became the one who stepped on me," Ada said quietly, her voice steady. Mama Oak closed her eyes. "I know." A long pause stretched between them. The tension wasn't gone, but it had softened just slightly. "I'm sorry," Mama Oak whispered. "For everything, I treated you like the enemy. But you've shown me more care than my own children." Ada blinked back tears. She had waited years to hear those words. But now that they came, they didn't bring triumph. They brought peace. "You were hurting, and you passed the hurt on," Ada replied. They sat there in the dark, 2 wounded women, shaped by pain, slowly undoing what the years had tangled. It started with a phone call. Then 2. Then suddenly, they were back. Chijioke's sisters, Amora and Enkech, arrived unannounced. All smiles and loud greetings, dressed in lace and carrying fruit baskets. It had been nearly 2 months since Mama Oak fell sick, and they hadn't so much as sent a message. But now, they were hugging their mother like long-lost heroes. "Mama, Aya, look at you, you're looking better. Ada has done well." Enkech winked at Ada as she handed her a purse. Hope you didn't burn yourself out playing nurse. Ada gave a tight smile. She knew why they were here. Not for their mother. For position. For property. For power. When they saw Mama Oak sitting upright in bed, speaking clearer, they relaxed. Amara whispered to Chijiok in the corridor, already talking about resuming family meetings. Enkechai asked about the documents in Mama's safe. They didn't even try to hide their intentions. But what no one expected, not even Ada, was what Mama Oak did next. During dinner, she cleared her throat and said, "I've made my decision. Going forward, Ada will be handling all household and health matters, including my medications, appointments, and finances. She's the only one who has been here." The room fell silent. Even Chijiok looked stunned. "Mama," Amara began. She's just the wife of. She is more than any of you have ever been to me." Mama Oak cut in. "If that makes you uncomfortable, then perhaps ask yourself why." Ada sat frozen, eyes wide. For the first time, someone stood up for her. And not just anyone, the very woman who once destroyed her peace. Something had shifted again. But Ada knew one thing for sure. The storm had just begun. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. "She's manipulating Mama. She must have put something in her food. Since when does a wife control her mother-in-law's house?" Amara and Enkeche didn't hide their resentment. They watched Ada like hawks, questioning every decision she made, from the groceries she bought to the nurse's payment schedule. Chijiok, caught between fear and pride, began to retreat. He no longer spoke up during family conversations. If anything, he seemed embarrassed. Ada had risen in status, and it unsettled him. But Mama Oak didn't flinch. When Amara tried to access her mother's room with legal papers one morning, Mama Oak raised her voice for the first time since her illness. "Out, you weren't here when I needed you. Now you come with documents." "But Mama, Ada is not your blood." She was the only one who acted like it. Ada stood at the door, holding a tray of hot tea. For once, she wasn't hiding in the kitchen, wasn't shrinking in the shadows. She stood tall, silent, steady, sure. The next day, Mama Oak called a family meeting. The daughters rolled their eyes, but they came. In front of everyone, she said, "Ada was not perfect, but she stayed. She served me without complaint, even when I treated her like dirt. If I die today, she deserves more than you all combined." Stunned silence. Ada didn't cry, she didn't gloat. She simply nodded because finally someone saw her. From that day forward, no one dared speak to her with contempt. Not even Chijiok. In that house, where she was once nothing, she now walked with quiet authority. But deep down, Ada knew her story wasn't over. It was just beginning. They couldn't stand it. Amara and Enkechai watched with disgust as Ada sat next to Mama Oak during another hospital appointment, calmly signing off on her medication review. "This girl thinks she owns the house now," Enkechai hissed. "I'm telling you," Amara whispered. "We need to do something before it's too late." That week, rumors began to spread. Anonymous calls reached Mama Oak's pastor. Lies that Ada was secretly draining Mama's bank account, that she was controlling her medication, that she was using charm to win the old woman's favor. Mama Oak received the calls. She said nothing to Ada at first, but the next morning, Ada found her unusually quiet, her face unreadable, doubt hung in the air like smoke. Ada's heart dropped. "You believe them?" Mama Oak didn't answer immediately. Then she sighed. "I used to, that would have been easy, but no, not anymore." Ada blinked. "I know what I did to you," Mama Oak continued, her voice firm, "and if you wanted revenge, I would have deserved it, but you didn't. You gave me mercy, more than I ever gave you." That evening, in front of the whole family, Mama Oak addressed the whispers. "I know lies when I hear them. Ada is not your threat, your guilt is. If you spent more time showing love than spreading rumors, maybe you'd have earned my trust like she did." Ada stood quietly at the corner of the room. Her heart beat heavily, not with fear, but with something unfamiliar, respect. That night, Chijiok came to her quietly. "I never defended you, I was afraid," he said, "but I see now, you're stronger than all of us." Ada didn't respond immediately. Because strength wasn't what she sought. She had simply chosen not to break. The house no longer echoed with harsh commands or cruel jabs. Instead, it breathed softly, like a wound finally scabbing over. Mama Oak had fully recovered now. She walked with a cane, but her steps were steady. So was her voice. One morning, she called Ada to the sitting room. "You've done more than anyone ever did for me," she said. "I want you to stay. Not as a helper, but as the true daughter of this house." Chijiok sat beside her, nodding. "I'll do better this time," he added, "if you'll give me another chance." Ada looked at them both. So much had changed, but something inside her whispered that she had changed too. and no amount of apologies or recognition could rewrite the pain she endured in silence for years. She smiled gently. I forgive you, both of you, but I can't stay here anymore. Not because I'm angry, but because I've grown beyond the space. There was silence. I need to build a life where I'm not just needed, but respected from the beginning. And she did. Ada moved out a week later. She rented a small apartment, got a job at a community clinic, and started a women's support group. Mama Oak visited often, no longer as a tyrant, but as a humble guest. Chijioke still called, still apologized, still hoped. But Ada had found something deeper than marriage. She had found herself. She didn't rise through revenge. She rose by staying true to who she was, even when no one else saw her worth. And that was her victory.